I was like pulling up documents in case I have to share my screen. So Zach, Damien, Becca, Tom, and John. You guys have a quorum. I'm probably going to keep my camera off and just function as a moderator unless I'm speaking. Moderating in terms of like letting you know if people are here or not, and if people have their hands raised.
Okay. Thanks.
But I do have to get off at exactly 1 o'clock. So if
try to be done by then.
I will try and make maybe Tom the moderator, because otherwise when I sign off, the meeting ends.
Okay.
And Scott Horsley, when we changed the time from 10 to 11, he can't make it. Like I thought he was going to be able to make it at 11, but he can't till probably about 11:30. So if we could just skip over that agenda item, I'm asking the chair until 11:30. And as soon as he's like going to sandwich this in between two meetings. So as soon as I see him get on, I'll let you guys know. And
which agenda item was that?
It's the wastewater one.
Wastewater, okay.
For shellfish propagation. So those are my two little items of housekeeping business. And now I'm going to turn it over to the chair.
Okay. So it looks like so the meeting is started at 11:04. And we actually have a quorum, which is wonderful. So we're going to start with the Agricultural Commission with Mike DeVasto. And he's going to let us know what's going on with the Right to Farm bill. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, sorry, I was just on the phone for like a long time and I haven't had a chance to bring this up on here. Let me see. Okay.
Do you need a couple of minutes? Should we move on and come back or?
Well, no, why don't can I screen share?
Yes, Nancy handles that part.
Okay.
I think you can just do share screen at the bottom, but if not, let me know.
Yeah, as long as it's allowed. Yeah, okay.
Is it green for you?
Okay, share. I think this is the.
You're all set.
You guys can see that?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay. I think this is the actual one, but I have a bunch of files on my computer. I don't think anything's changed from this currently. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to read this or if Nancy sent a copy out to the board of what the Ag Commission is composed of. And
I did send it.
And do you guys have your charge as a Shellfish Advisory Board? Has anybody refreshed their memory on what the actual charge of the Shellfish Advisory Board is?
I did not get a chance to do that.
Okay, I think, let's see, let me just make sure, I just want to make sure, did that change what you see? Did anything change what you see?
No.
Okay, good.
No, it didn't.
So I'll just bring that up and Shellfish. Basically, there has been some concern that there would be some sort of overlap between an agricultural commission and the Shellfish Advisory Board. And I'm not sure I see anything other than like promoting agriculture and aquaculture-based economic opportunities for the town, which I don't really see as the primary role for the Shellfish Advisory Board. Shellfish Advisory Board primarily serves as an advisory on policy to the Select Board and on all shellfishing regulations and policy, including wild fishery, which an Ag Commission wouldn't be a policy advisor, but they do act as in an advisory capacity on farming issues. So there could be some overlap, but I think having two opinions, one from Shellfish Advisory Board and one from Agricultural Commission on a certain thing, not necessarily a downside. We see that with like, Natural Resources Advisory Board and Energy and Climate Change Committee. I forget what that's actually called. So I don't know what you guys think, but basically the idea was to bring this to Shellfish Advisory, get some comments and see if they are in favor of it, I guess, or not. And I think one of the benefits that it does add to both land-based agriculture and aquaculture, marine aquaculture, is that it does create a commission that would act as a mediator, advocator, and educator. So a lot of times, ag commissions are involved in, setting up farmers markets, agricultural fairs, promotional, promotional events and things like that. But also they primarily act as mediators between disputing neighbors or potentially upland owners, where you would have a body of people, the commission, that would be the first point of contact when there's a dispute, and hopefully resolve that prior to it having to go to maybe the ZBA or to a lawsuit or something like that. So if it's a matter that could be just sort of mediated on a very basic level, like, hey, could we move this over here? Or could we, consider some way to reduce, whatever byproduct of agriculture that's going on from interfering with a neighbor's right to their enjoyment of their property, then I see that as a benefit of things escalating beyond that point. So it's sort of a first point of contact that I think is important. And, we don't consider ourselves necessarily an agricultural town, but in all actuality, the town of Wellfleet is very much an agricultural town, and it spans our history with our Board of Health regulations that date back to 1985, where they first generated agricultural Board of Health regulations with the specific language to keep Wellfleet a rural community, or in view of Wellfleet remaining a rural community. And right now we practice more agriculture in the form of aquaculture in this town than I think agriculture has been practiced here for probably hundreds of years. And so it's an important part of our town. And I think it's important that with a right to farm declaration also come this agricultural commission, which is pretty standard. Most towns that adopt a right to farm declaration or bylaw also have agricultural commissions as a way to allow these things to function with minimal conflict with the other priorities of the town. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free.
So Jude has her hand up. So if anyone on the board has anything first, and then we'll take the audience. Anybody on the board?
Hey, Beck, it's Tom. Can you hear me? Hey, Mike, I look at this and I see, some value to this, some value, especially in the out years, 5-10 years from now. And more, when I start thinking about this, I can see some real benefits when you talk about maybe the science behind oyster breeding, what's going to happen with a warmer climate. What if the temperature goes up in the water, et cetera, et cetera. And is this group going to be looking at things like that to tackle? And if so, maybe there's more science kind of folks also on this board that can, run with the issue to other groups in town, or maybe the MSI, or maybe the Commonwealth, or maybe the feds, et cetera, to make sure that our groups, our grants, our wild guys are really focused on what's really happening to the agricultural community.
Yeah, so one of the charges would be to pursue all initiatives appropriate to creating a sustainable agricultural community. And so I would think that would tie into there. It would kind of be up to the select board as to how they appointed, but some people come to mind that have, experience in science and shellfishing, like Barbara Bernessel or something like that could be involved. I think there's overlap in some ways with Natural Resources Advisory Board and the Energy Committee as far as that sort of stuff. But being engaged in that, I think is definitely something that it could be.
Okay, good.
Kind of up to the commission how it directs itself once has its charges. But I think that leaves that open to that sort of thing to pursue initiatives to create sustainable agricultural community. So, yep. Does anybody have
Thanks.
any concerns?
Anyone else on the board? And we'll,
Yeah, Becca, it's John.
Yes.
So, Mike, this is a board that would be made up of townsfolk, I assume. This is not a federal, there's no, this would be our board. It would be
Yes.
an advisory board, not a regulatory board.
Non-regulatory
So
advisory.
this wouldn't add a layer of any other kind of regulations. I mean, you're obviously going to be in an advisory capacity to suggest things, just like our Natural Resources Board, for instance. You advise the select board, is that correct?
Yep, exactly.
All right. I guess it sounds like with the amount of farming that we have in the Bay right now, it's probably makes sense. I just, my concern is just, another layer of regulation. Do we need it? And what are the advantages to having another board that would oversee this kind of thing?
Well, I guess what I would say is that that it's recommended by the state if you have, a right to farm declaration, that you have this agricultural commission, and that also it's something that we have in some neighboring towns. So Truro has an ag commission as well as a shellfish advisory panel, and so does Dennis. And Orleans, I think, still has a shellfish advisory panel or a board, as well as a ag commission. And I think the primary the primary differences in this is that basically they're more involved in encouraging the pursuit of agriculture and facilitating that, as well as acting as mediators and advocates than anything else, and preserving agriculture. And as we move into a time when we have escalating property prices and different a shift in our overall landscape as far as who can afford to be here and who still remains here, and preserving what we have in this town, that the commission would be basically a first line facilitator of maintaining that, as well as mediating issues. Now, obviously, if it can't be mediated by the Ag Commission, it would go into the next steps of going to ZBA or going into litigation. But the idea is that an agricultural commission may be able to prevent that step from needing to be taken. So I guess that would be the primary benefit. I don't think it really adds any layer of regulatory framework to anything, and including the right to farm declaration doesn't actually allow for anything that's not already permitted in the town of Wellfleet. So it doesn't affect, it doesn't affect the rules or regulations in the town. Anything any permitted agriculture that is practiced right now would remain the same as far as permitting and and sorry, I'm just getting a bunch of phone calls. So basically, it doesn't really add any regulatory framework. It's basically is what it is.
So, okay, but when I think about the mediation, I guess I'd want to have a nuts and bolts of that actually work in practicality. Like, how has that helped other towns? What exactly would you be mediating? When it comes to, you're talking about land disputes and things. That's, I'm just, like I said, I'm not exactly sure how that would work. How an agricultural commission would be a mediator.
So basically so this is tied to a right to farm declaration that's also being proposed. And as part of that is resolution of disputes. And so in that section, it basically says any person who seeks to complain about the operation of a farm may, notwithstanding pursuing any other available remedy, file a grievance with the select board, the zoning enforcement officer, or the Board of Health, depending upon the nature of the grievance. The filing of the grievance does not suspend the time within which to pursue any other available remedies that the aggrieved may have. The zoning enforcement officer or the select board may forward a copy of the grievance to the Agricultural Advisory Council, or in this case, Agricultural Commission, or its agent, which shall review and facilitate the resolution of the grievance and report its recommendation to the referring town authority within an agreed upon time frame. So basically, it's like if there's a dispute amongst abutters or landowners about a farming activity, it would go through the normal process, get directed to the commission. They would see if they could resolve the dispute, or at least make a recommendation to resolve the dispute. And if that doesn't work, it still goes through its regular channels of if someone were to dispute something now, So, yeah.
Okay, so when you think about that, typically what you're thinking about is somebody, your neighbor wants to raise chickens or pigs or something, and there's a dispute. Is that what you're talking about? That kind of
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah, I mean, that would be on land-based agriculture, or even in anything to do with agriculture. So
Okay,
yes,
and
so
there-
that would be like is someone lodging a complaint. And let's see, I'm screen sharing. Let me see if I can bring this up. Yeah, so just so you can actually read it, because
This
sometimes,
is like under the right to farm
yes.
statute, I get it. Okay.
So this right here, so there's a corrected version of this that's available, but this section I think is exactly the same still. Can you guys see this?
I can see that. So is that part of Mass General Law? Is that the idea?
So this comes from, it's not Mass General Law. What it comes from is a model right to farm bylaw that has been drafted by the state of Massachusetts.
Okay.
This basically right to farm declaration bylaw is basically within, it's very close to what Orleans, Dennis, and Falmouth have. I know Eastham's looking into doing the same thing. Truro, I believe, is also, their ag commission is pushing to actually have right to farm declaration as well, but they just have an ag commission. Mostly all the other towns have ag commissions and right to farm declarations. I did call around to all the other towns to see if there's any issues that they've arrived at due to these two things, and I've only been met with positive reactions and responses to officials, including boards of health, health agents and select board members. So yeah, so I just wanted to put this up there so everyone had a chance to actually read that. So it doesn't actually interfere with the process of filing a grievance or a complaint about something to do with agriculture, but it does actually give an opportunity to this commission to try and resolve it on the ground level before it escalates.
Okay.
I'd like to, if I could comment,
Sure.
Becca.
Yes, Damian.
I'd like to see a version of this that restricts the actions that could be taken or just resolutions that could be committed to terra firma based and not have all the overlapping input from various town boards now, going to the select board, going to the ZBA based on marine based activity or subtidal lands. I also think that, in terms of conservation, in terms of aquaculture, having another board, I just think the town is heavy-handed, maybe not heavy-handed, but it has fair amount of representation of these interests and concerned that another representing board for aquaculture while we have and watching the wild fisheries slip away is concerning to me. That's all.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I just think that right now, if there's a complaint about any agriculture, and aquaculture is listed as a form of agriculture in this, that it would still go through all these various issues, would go through the various departments like the Board of Health and the zoning board, and potentially litigation. And that's all going to happen no matter what. I mean, this basically is a council, a commission that would be able to sort of attempt to make to seek a resolution without having to do that. So possibly saving the zoning board and some local, like our health agent and our zoning enforcement agent, some time that could be better spent somewhere else.
No, surely, and I think a liaison between the USDA and Barnstable is a good idea too. I like it for, like I said, for shore, for land-based activity. I totally agree, and represent aquaculture and land-based activity. But what would happen if you had, conflicting recommendations, say, on the use of the Hilton Trust land, versus, where you had maybe, say, the SAB recommends a certain use that was a combination use or something for aquaculture or wild fisheries or recreational fisheries, whereas the new agriculture board may then be supporting the interest more of aquaculture, and then the town finds itself in a juxtaposition of, supporting views for different industries, and I guess that's going to happen regardless, but now
Yeah,
I'm wondering how that layering is going to pan out. How do you perceive that layering panning out?
So, I guess you have two different functions, right? So I could see the concern there, but I think in the end, the select board winds up being neither of these boards are actually regulatory, so they're advisory. So, it may be that the select board, that the agricultural commission gives a different recommendation to the select board than the Shellfish Advisory Board, and then that would be an issue for the select board to sort of look at and determine where the best decision lays. So I'm not going to sit here and say that they may disagree or agree on their recommendations, because maybe they won't. I guess I primarily view the Ag Commission as a land-based entity, but it does also have some interest in aquaculture-based activity too. So yeah, it just really would come down to basically two advisory boards giving their recommendations. So yeah, but I understand that concern, especially coming from the wild fishery.
All right.
But again, they're not regulatory. They're just advisory.
Is this draft available somewhere online to read?
It is in our packet and it is
Okay,
currently in the warrant,
okay.
the draft warrant
Mhm.
for town meeting. So this is actually a town meeting vote that would, both these things would go to town meeting. I haven't seen or noticed in other towns, their ag commission interfering with their shellfish advisory panel or having much conflict in those areas when I've talked to people in other towns. But I'm not going to say that they may not have different recommendations because, you know, there'll be
Okay.
different groups.
Are there any other questions on the board? No. All right, Jude, as the first of the audience. Do you
Thank
still have a
you.
question?
Oh, yeah, I have a lot of questions. This is obviously very complicated, Mike, and I did just find the updated draft in your packet. It's, 7 or 8 pages long. I know that town councils looked at it. There's a year ago when you brought up this idea, no one's against farming, but we encouraged you to reach out to other committees. And I don't know that you've done that. I mean, you're here now, but that's upon Nancy's asking you to explain this. So it's way too fast, so many questions, but I would just ask this of you. Since you were so bold as to, I would say, take for yourself an acre of land from the taxpayers with the new HIDLA purchase, how would such a dispute be resolved with this commission? Because I have a lot of issues with that. And you talk about how there are all these other avenues that I can resolve my dispute. Well, no, I'm told it's out of Nancy's hands now and we have to wait for the state. So how would your agricultural commission, ask someone like you who's taking an acre of town-owned land without asking for its use, very quickly
Point of
put yourself
order,
on an agenda? Let
Becca.
me finish, please, because you've had a lot of time to air this idea of yours. So please, this is really my only opportunity and I want it to be on record
It's
for all the
irrelevant.
landowners.
So
How would
here's,
you resolve it? You want to get involved with mediation between yourself taking an acre and us who paid $2 million for it with no process
Okay, so
whatsoever?
this isn't the appropriate place to bring this one
No,
up.
but how would his? Answer that, please.
First of all, I didn't take anything. I requested just as, first of all, I'm not even gonna respond to that
Yeah, just,
because it's so out of line. And
I'm
The other
asking how
thing
the
is-
commission would respond
Okay.
to it,
Excuse
like
me,
not you.
Jude, we have a limited amount of time here. So if you have other questions
This
that
is
you
of
need to
the
get off your
utmost
chest.
importance. This is of the utmost importance. And we as taxpayers have had no venue to ask any questions. And it is during COVID. And I'm just asking everyone to slow down, especially since we have no TA. We may be hopefully postponing ATM. So all of these complex ideas are well thought out. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
Okay, I hear your concerns, but this is not the specific thing that we're taking up today. It's not on our agenda for discussion. We're sticking to what's on the agenda, and we have a couple of minutes left before we need to move on to the next topic. So we're going to keep it strictly to what's going on with this agricultural commission suggestion, and not any of the what could be's. So do you have anything that's specific?
Yes, it leaves a lot open. He talks about creating initiatives. Those can be tax initiatives. Those can be all over the place. And we have a shellfish constable who is supposed to monitor all of the aquaculture stuff. As far as the declaration versus the commission, I have listened to his presentations before the Board of Selectmen, and I don't think they've really had an in-depth conversation about the commission yet either. So to put this on a warrant is just irresponsible.
So it sounds like it's time for us to start listening to what he has to say for all of the different boards so that we can make an educated decision on it when it does come up. That
He
does seem like
hasn't
what we're
talked
supposed to be
to
doing
any-
today.
He hasn't talked to any other boards, and Nancy asked that he come here because he wouldn't have otherwise.
The Shellfish Board asked to hear what he had to say because we'd like to weigh in on this. So if you have something
Nancy brought
specific,
that up.
to his
Nancy brought that
questions.
up. In the last 2 Board of Selectmen meetings, he's skirted this issue and there has not been, this commission part of it is quite different than a declaration. And if the town wants to get in the middle of mediation, it's stupid. And I'm sure town council will say no ultimately. So it's just so
Okay.
complicated and complex. And he makes it seem like, oh, it's no regulation. Committees are the only way that citizens can voice such things. They may not have any regulatory power, but they do have influence. So you can't out of one side of your mouth say, oh, it's, it has no power. Yet it's the only way that the people participate in the process. It's just like that on Capitol Hill. It's the committees. And I will say that if 5 people plus 2 alternates are on this committee, whatever it is, it's going to drain interest in other committees, your own included. And Eastham's Shellfish Advisory Board was eliminated. So I don't want to see that happen.
Thank you for your concern. We have about 3 minutes left for this particular topic. Or less. So what else do we need to know? Michael, is there anything else that you'd like to say related to this?
I can't figure out how to
what
raise my
needs to
hand.
be said. I think if anyone has any concerns, I'm more than happy to.
Okay.
hear
Nancy
them.
does appear to have a question. I missed her.
Sorry, then with all these things up, I can't figure out how to raise my own hand.
Oh,
on
yeah.
Zoom. But let me, actually, what Damien said just now resonated with me. It really made sense to me. I feel my job is to, ensure the long-term sustainability of the shellfishing industry, which includes aquaculture and wild. And I also wonder about, he just kind of clarified for me the fact that, you have these, you would end up having 2 advisory boards, a shellfish advisory board, which, hold on, I'm going to read you what your charge is if my computer will wake up, is to serve as a shellfish advisory board to the selectmen and to make a study of existing shellfish conditions and to advise relative to any plan for future improvement and development of the industry. So that's like the industry overall. If you then also have an agricultural commission, and let's be honest, on the shellfish advisory board, it's mostly farmers. It's very difficult to get wild fishermen to participate. And so if you have then an agricultural commission, which is also farmers, and I would imagine that an aquaculture farmer would be nominated or put on the board, at least one, then you have these 2 boards and, there's no offense here. I'm just like, the reality of the situation is that it will be dominated by grant holders. And this is a town, the soul of this town is in the wild fishery. And, I am concerned about that. And then something that Jude said just resonated with me as well. And that is influence. And it's true. It's like, if you have a lot of, if you have a wild group of harvesters that kind of relies on the Shellfish Constable in many ways to carry forward their ideas through talks on the flats. But then you have 2 different entities that are bringing forth, because of more actively involved farmers, both of those entities are wielding influence on the select board, who, as Mike said, is the ultimate decision maker. These are both advisory boards, and I get that. But if you have a lot more farmers making their voices heard as opposed to wild harvesters, then I would worry again, like Damien said, about the wild fishery slipping away. And, I think that Wellfleet, there probably isn't conflict in other towns because other towns don't really have as much aquaculture as we do. We're #1 in the state for the number of farmers and the amount of bottom that we have under cultivation in this town. So it's hard for any other town to keep up with us, really. Yes, there's more production, Duxbury and Barnstable are our closest
Yeah.
neighbors in farming, but we have almost double the aquaculture that Barnstable does. So I do worry about either conflicting that Shellfish Advisory and the Agricultural Commission would be providing the select board, which is the regulatory authority, with conflicting advice, or if in the process being dominated by farmers, if that wild voice gets lost, and then the influence on the select board for their decision making is driven by the aquaculture industry. And it's just my job to make sure that every voice is represented to the best of their ability. So I'll just voice my concern like Damien had. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, clearly this is an agricultural commission. I think that the Shellfish Advisory Board is all shellfish related. I don't know that, you know, the wild fishery would lose its voice as a result of this, but I could understand where you'd feel that, where someone might feel that they don't have the potential to advocate for the wild fishery. And I think ultimately it's the role of the Shellfish Advisory Board to advocate for the shellfishing industry as a whole, and this as an agricultural commission to primarily serve as facilitators and promoting agriculture. So I'm not going to sit here and say that those who serve on the Agricultural Commission are going to be, you know, unconcerned with wild fishery existing, or that there'd be some sort of, you know, push to do that. But, you know, point taken. I could see how someone may be concerned about that. I would say that we do have some protections for the wild fishery, in that in order to have any aquaculture exist or any expansion of aquaculture, there has to be and it's written into Mass General Law, that there be no materially negative impact to the existing resources. So I don't know that this really would have much impact on the wild fishery, but you know, that's just me. So yeah.
Is it something that could be changed to exclude shellfish in general? Or is that?
I think you could do that. I did sort of, I think that part of the issue is that as an agricultural town, a lot of our agriculture is aquaculture.
Yes.
And a lot of that winds up being land-based also, including processing and stuff like that.
Yes.
And so I think that the benefit of having an agricultural commission be a part of that conversation, as far as dispute mediation, and
I'm definitely seeing how it could be used specifically to help us if we have our facilities at our homes and our neighbors complain. Here's a chance to have someone who can have a mediated conversation, as opposed to just whatever we have now.
Yeah,
There's definitely an opportunity that this would offer us as shellfishing farmers that would be beneficial to us, along with the economic opportunities for the town. I mean, I know we have SPAT, but this being more town-based seems like it might be also beneficial.
sure. And SPAT does not actually like mediate or
Right.
negotiate.
No, they're just doing economic opportunities more.
And I see these things all working together. You know, I don't think that like they would be in conflict with each other, but I certainly would not be opposed to adding the language for Mass General Law saying that in something under the pursuing initiatives, or I mean, what is it? Promoting agriculture and aquaculture-based opportunities within the town in some sort of, so long as it does not materially impact other natural resources or something like that.
Yeah.
Again, they're advisory, so
Mhm.
so I don't see how it would really impact the wild fishery,
Mhm.
but go ahead, Nancy. I'm used to
Well-
sharing. Sorry, Becca.
Sorry,
Sorry.
yeah.
Do you
Yes,
mind?
Nancy.
Rebecca?
Yeah.
So my only thing would be like, if we're gonna start at this late date to make some
Mhm.
changes to it, then maybe we should just postpone it a year. I don't know. If we're gonna start messing around, I think, I'm just thinking about how much everybody has on their plate already. But I'll just throw that out there for consideration.
Yeah, well, I certainly, this has been, you know, up and
Mhm.
on the select board, at least the select board has seen it for, I think around a year now. So I think it's something that would be in conjunction, but because it's an advisory board,
Mhm.
and its duties and responsibilities are that they are, I don't think necessarily making a change that sort of sort of puts in their charge not to conflict with other natural resources or something like that. It would be necessarily, that would be something I'd have to think about and the board would think about. And ultimately, this is not a commission that the select board is creating. It's a warrant article for the
Mhm.
town to decide if they
Right.
want to.
Can it be separated from aquaculture?
It could be, yeah, you could write land-based
Because
agriculture.
I see your point that there's a lot of agriculture, aquatic agriculture going on, but if we just separated it specifically to land-based, either for now and change it, maybe try to change it later, or whether.
And I
you know,
had brought
okay.
that up actually at the last meeting. I don't
Mhm.
really have a problem putting the
Okay.
Ag Commission only
Mhm.
as far as land-based, but I
Mhm.
think you might lose a little bit of what the Agricultural Commission could do.
Okay,
Um,
right.
So
And it looks like Damien's got a question related.
go ahead, Damien.
That's pretty much what I was steering towards, Becca. And
Yeah.
like, it's specifically the language, Mike, if you could put up the first document you had, where it talks about town-owned lands, changing that statement to shoreside, town-owned shoreside lands or land, you know, like something like that, to not include the subtitle lands, where I just think that that's the disparity that makes me uncomfortable, like right there.
Are you talking about preservation of agricultural lands owned by the town?
Yes.
Okay,
Where the charge then becomes for the Agricultural Commission to represent those town-owned lands, you know?
well, again,
Because I do see the need. But
Yeah.
I worry about I worry about heavy-handed representation for aquaculture over town-owned lands that are subtitled specifically.
yeah, okay, well, I can see where you're coming from. I think ultimately, when I read that, I think that they're, you know, advising to preserve agricultural lands that are already
Okay.
under agricultural.
I'm going to
purpose.
save 4 more minutes on this topic.
Okay, well, you know, I'm certainly not
Scott-
here in any.
Scott
type-
is here and he has to be off by noon. or
Oh, okay.
12:05,
then-
just so you know.
Okay,
He has to be off here by noon.
yeah.
Okay, so
So we'd better move this along.
we can move it along. Yeah, if you have any recommendations, please just, you know, email me.
Okay.
And I'll bring them up to the board,
Mhm.
to the select board. And, you know, everyone's obviously entitled to their opinion on them. And it would be ultimately a town meeting vote anyway.
Okay, thank you so much for coming and explaining what's behind all of this and
Okay,
letting us ask our questions.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, unshare. There we go. Now I can see everybody. Okay, shall we move on to the wastewater? It doesn't sound like we want to move to support or anything on this right now. We want to hear it changed. Am I correct in that?
I'd like to review some of the documents that are available electronically and I'd certainly recommend holding off on recommending anything until town meeting.
Okay. Anyone want to push anything on that? Nope. Okay. So wastewater, all right. And I have lost my paperwork here. Hold on. So Scott is here to do wastewater.
Hello, how are you? Can you hear me?
Hello, welcome.
Thank you, thank you. Sorry for
There
the
you are.
time, sorry for the scheduling conflicts. I'm trying to squeeze between two other things
Sure.
here. But what I can do, if you'd like, Madam Chair, is provide, I can show you 3 slides that might summarize our overall wastewater plan.
Okay.
And I can do that in less than 5 minutes, and also talk
Wonderful.
for a couple minutes about what we're proposing for shellfish aquaculture. So if
Okay,
I may share my screen.
you may.
Let's see.
Thank you for working with us on the time restraints.
Oh, thank you for working with me. My apologies. So can you see this slide, this beautiful
Yes.
view, which I'm sure you're
Lovely.
more familiar than me. So we've been meeting with a bunch of different groups, the Selectmen, the Board of Health, Finance Committee, Affordable Housing, et cetera. So, and Conservation, I might add, as well. So we're thrilled to be before you even briefly here. We've been working for, I guess, the last couple of years almost now, putting together a so-called targeted watershed plan that is designed to meet the Clean Water Act requirements. As I think most people know, I think all 15 towns are in this together on Cape Cod, trying to address these nitrogen issues. And our plan for Wellfleet is a little bit unique, but really quickly, the goals here are to restore ecosystems water quality. As I already mentioned, the real legal driver is Clean Water Act. Something has to happen. The traditional method is to build sewers, and that can happen. That can definitely solve the problem. We've been looking at some alternatives that we think are less expensive. We're also interested in something that have quicker results. When you build a sewer, you're removing sources that might be 5 or 10 years flow time from the bay. If we do things in the water and close to the water, which we've got a number of elements here, we'll get quicker results. We think what we're proposing is substantially less cost than a traditional sewering program. We've also spent quite a bit of time with the affordable housing groups in town, and as you'll see, part of this plan, I think, directs and attempts to sort of, optimize win-win with that group as well. We're also really interested in so-called co-benefits and jobs. And then, of course, climate change is a big driver for everybody. So that's a big part of our plan here as well. This is a quick graphic intended to kind of show the overview of the different strategies that we are proposing, really as an alternative to a town-wide centralized sewer. Maybe I'll just mention for starters, as I think most people know, the town has hired GHD Engineering and recently completed a plan out at the transfer station, which proves that that facility is large enough and permeable enough to take flows from the entire town. If you were to build a town-wide sewer, I think the ultimate flow is up as high as 700,000 gallons per day to solve the problem. So we have a backup plan that can use a traditional approach. But very quickly, these other items that we're showing on this plan, including both the sort of pullouts, but also some of the icons on this list over here, will add up to, in fact, the same reduction in goals. So it's really meant to be a broad plan. We've actually got 8 or 10 elements in there, including something called a permeable reactive barrier along Commercial Street, which is really a wood chip based, so-called nature-based solution, which is being tested in several other places. Looks like it's worked quite well. Our plan also is interested in teaming up on impacts of some of the restoration projects, the positive impacts like Mayo Creek, Herring River. Also part of the backup plan is downtown sewers, which obviously could be connected to the transfer station. We have the 95 Lawrence Affordable Housing Project, which might be one of the first ones that I know of in the state that actually provides a good deal of affordable housing and cleans up the water at the same time. Pretty unique. And I think I'm pretty excited about that, as are, I think, a number of the other people from the town have been involved in it. We're working with Mass DOT to, as many of you may know, there's a project out at the intersection between Route 6 right now in the town entrance area that seeks to redo part of that highway. And our suggestion is, let's fix the nitrogen problem there, because that's a big contributor as well. And then you can see over here in the list, we also have aquaculture, shellfish, fertilizer controls, other stormwater projects. And another big driver is enhanced, innovative, and alternative septic systems. There's a new generation of septic systems that actually also use wood chip bioreactors. There's actually 3 or 4 designs, all of which have been tested at the test center out at the Mass Military Reservation run by the Barnstable County Health Department. Some of you may know the name George Hoyfelder, who started this. He's been looking at a range of different technologies. The ones that seem to be working very well are, again, wood chip based systems. Most simply, it's an extra tank with wood chips and aerator and some limestone in it, and they're achieving 80–90% removal of nitrogen at a pretty reasonable cost. So that's an integral part of our plan as well. And I think, let me just look what my next slide is. Yeah, I think I'll stop. Well, actually, you know what? I'll put this one out there. We've been looking at capital costs between this so-called non-traditional plan. And by the way, this is a 25-year plan, something that's intended to go over 25 years. So when we add up the benefits of the so-called non-traditional things I just outlined for you, we're estimating that the capital cost of this over the 25-year period, I need to keep emphasizing that, is somewhere in the order of, let's call it $30 to $60 million. A traditional plan, which rely on sewers and wastewater alone, probably 150 million or north of that. So we do think there's a benefit here. The challenge with this non-traditional program is we need to have a team of technologies all together. This works. Any one of them or 2 of them won't work. So that's the plan. We started, as many of you may know, maybe I'll stop sharing there just because I don't take much more time, but I'll just say that, stop share, that historically the town has looked at shellfish and aquaculture being part of this plan, in some cases a very large part. In our plan, it's about 5 to 10% of the plan. Our thinking is that there's no doubt that shellfish, aquaculture remove nitrogen. It's been proven in many, many places. It's a byproduct of the industry. It's a wonderful thing. As you all know, it provides jobs and all kinds of other good stuff. I think that we have thought hard and long about what types of expansions might occur. And Nancy, we've been working with Nancy Chavetta. She's been wonderful to work with, provided us a lot of information. One of my students at Tufts University, Madison Bolduc, is here, has been working on this as part of a semester-long project as well, helping develop an initial plan. And what we've come up with is basically a plan to continue a sustainable growth of your oyster and related shellfish industries. Looking at the last 20 years of data that Nancy's shared with us, it looks like on average, the oyster has been growing around 4 to 5%. Our plan is to continue that and to provide the shellfish department the resources that they can sustainably manage and slowly continue to grow it, and then be able to claim the nitrogen credits for that. So I'll stop there, and we have some further details we could go into, but frankly, we've been working with Nancy and Johnny and others, and we have some more specific plans that we've shared with Nancy about maybe where to start some of the first few years in terms of additional culch, additional seed. Nancy, maybe I'll ask you, do you want us to go into that at all at this point, or should I stop there?
Well, I sent it around. I sent the 5-year plan that Johnny and I worked on with Madison and
Okay.
I forget, Andrew? No.
Andrew, yeah.
Andrew, okay. So I could, go over that or answer questions about that too.
Sure, whatever you think. I don't know how much detail you want to get into. But.
I have a question about the comparison of how much wastewater is going to be removed with the non-traditional versus the traditional, because we are looking at a very long-term, what do you say, like 25 years here? So
yes.
Are we looking that far ahead at how much material we're removing? Are we going to be dragging by the time it's 25 years from now and we're going, oh, gee, we should have done so much more when we had a chance? Are we looking ahead that far?
Yeah, okay, great question.
Or are we just doing what the state's minimum is here?
No, we're actually looking at the so-called build out, meaning when Mass Estuaries Project did their study of Wellfleet Harbor that they published in 2017, they calculated the existing nitrogen loads. And I should say it's more than wastewater because it comes from wastewater some fertilizers, and then stormwater runoff, which is why I mentioned the Route 6 project. So they all contribute to the so-called watershed load. And what they did is they calculated existing loads at that time, which is around 2017. And they also calculated a build-out load, which frankly is about double what it is today. So our plan is geared at both of those. It provides plans over the next 20 years to take care of existing loads and whatever growth occurs in 20 years, and then provides some strategies beyond that for the whole build out. So that's the goal. And we definitely want to be forward looking to make sure that, as you're suggesting, we don't solve one problem and then come back with a bigger one later.
Right. Okay.
Other questions? You know, frankly, the Shellfish budget that we put together, Madison and Andrew have worked on, is a relatively small component cost-wise over the overall plan. So if it does what we think it's going to do, it's very cost-effective. We don't want to overestimate it. And I think where we ended up, this 5 to 10% growth seems like well, first of all, it's been historical. Some people believe the past can be predicted by the future can be predicted by the past. I'm not sure, but we wanted to pick a growth rate and project that over the 25 years so that it was reasonable. And I think what we're asking for is a budget. Part of the town meeting warrant article is to provide Nancy and her department a little bit more flexibility in trying to support these programs that she and Johnny and others are trying to do. So.
Damien, you have a question?
Yeah, question for Scott and I guess Nancy as well. How much of the proposal is reliant on commitment for the town on developing shellfish propagation? Like, is the proposal moving forward to the state with the shellfish as part of the package? It's approved, and then the town is then committed to providing those numbers? Because I'm at a point,
question.
my understanding is that the state thus far does not have a program that accounts for shellfish as nitrogen removal, that accounts for how shellfish used in that program can enter the commercial stream, that accounts for any of the real finer nuances of programs like this functioning.
Great question. First of all, the plan does include shellfish, as I said, about 10%, I think, on the best count of the nitrogen removal over the 25 years. It is not a commitment because it is an adaptive management plan, meaning every 5 years, the town and the state will sit down and assess where they're at. So in other words, if shellfish is doing better than that, then they'll get more credit for it. If they're doing less than that, they get less credit. And you look at other strategies within the list of, I think there's about 8 or 10 technologies, and adjust each 5 years. So the whole point of the adaptive management plan and having multiple technologies, as we're calling them, the strategies, is that we can make that adjustment. Frankly, as one example, the biggest driver in the whole program are these enhanced, innovative, and alternative septics. And we're using a very conservative estimate of how much nitrogen we think they'll remove. I personally, based upon the research that's being done out at the Mass Tech Center, believe that we're going to do much better. And what that would do is that would relieve pressure, if you will, on other strategies to perform. So there's a lot of flexibility in there. And it's a plan. It would ultimately, we hope it becomes a permit, and as part of that so-called watershed permit, every 5 years we check in with the state, see how we're doing, and make adjustments. And by the way, the other part, Damien, to your question is through the Cape Cod Commission's so-called 208 plan, they were able to develop a credit system, at least for planning purposes, for a number of technologies, including shellfish. So we do have a number that DEP does recognize, and they would allow us to put into the plan. The other thing that's going to happen once the permit is approved and we move forward with this would be there's water quality monitoring in the bay. So the real proof is in the pudding, right? That's what the Clean Water Act really is about. They want to see observable improvements in water quality and also reestablishment of eelgrass in some places they're going to be looking at. So they've set up these so-called sentinel stations. One is right out in the middle of Wellfleet Harbor. We're hearing that they want to set up another one right off of Herring River. So it's maybe a couple of sentinel stations in Wellfleet, and they'll use those over the 25 years to sort of see collectively how all of these different strategies are working together. But again, my belief is that if we have 6 or 8 of these as a team and we have contributions, I think it could work out pretty nicely. So hopefully that answers your question.
That does. Thank you.
How are we going to be implementing the change of septic systems?
Was the first part when, Becca?
How?
How? Okay, so we're working with Hillary Lemos at the health department, health agent, and we have a regulation that we've drafted that the Board of Health has met on 3 times now. And essentially, the way it will work, as proposed, and they haven't adopted it yet, but they're looking at it pretty seriously, would be that any new systems or upgraded systems. So let's say you want to tear down your house and turn it into a 4 or 5 bedroom house from a cottage, is one example. That would trigger this regulation. And you'd have 2 choices. You could put in either a standard INA system, which is approved by the state now, which frankly gets you some benefit, but not a lot. Or you could put one of these new so-called enhanced INA systems, and currently there are 3 of them we've identified, which have really good data. And in that case, our proposal is the town would provide a subsidy as an incentive for the homeowner to select that system over the standard INAs, if you will, which frankly provide only marginal benefit. We're seeing that these newer systems that are in the DEP permitting process now provide a much bigger. So the regulation would provide a subsidy, which is part of the other town meeting warrant that we're asking for, some funding through the health department so they could pay for these subsidies. Yeah.
Is that Ryan Curley who has his hand up? Is that current or?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
So there's a problem with the oyster component. The problem is that it's oyster centric. Wellfleet's been landing an increased number of oysters year after year, but those gains in production have largely been offset by a decrease in production of cohogs. So if you just start graphing out, the oyster landings exclusively, which is what it looks like the current drafts are, even though the previous ones had them combined, you're only accounting for a single species and not the overall production of the shellfishery. And that, yes, Wellfleet has been landing fewer cohogs year after year for a while. So, just looking at the oyster landings does not tell the entirety of the story. Thank you.
If I may respond, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Ryan. And you're absolutely right. Those numbers are oyster specific, but our plan is not. The plan would include any and all wild oysters, clams, any shellfish that provides this function. And it's difficult, as I think you'll all agree, to predict population changes in the future. Our theory is by providing Nancy and crew more resources and focusing on 5-year plans that the industry as a whole can build slowly and sustainably. I agree with you. I can't predict which species are going to do better than others. Maybe somebody here can, I certainly can't. But the goal is to have a steady, sustainable increase. The idea is put resources in and help develop it and hope to have an increased outcome. But you're absolutely right, Ryan. The data that we're using to look at potential increases is oyster specific, but the plan is not. In fact, if we did go through the details of what Nancy and Madison and others and Johnny have been talking about, I believe it does involve cohogs and other species. So the plan is focused on what the town believes, the shellfish department believes are the right species to focus on. And that'll likely change over 25 years. Another
I
reason
like
why
that this
said
plan
adopted
isn't
plan.
based specifically on shellfish. It's actually based on stopping it at its source, which is
Well,
something that we need to address in this town. So.
Well, exactly. And there's 2 sides to that coin. As I said before, stopping at its source, if you focus only on that, you might have to wait 5 or 10 years to see any results because of the flow times. So our
Right,
view
but
is.
if we're not working on the source, then in 5 to 10 years, we're
Correct.
still going to have the problem. So we
That's
need to hit
exactly
this
right.
from at least 2 different angles.
That's exactly right. And this plan is probably, I mean, I could give you the real numbers, but I can guess and say at least 50, 60% focus on the source and the other 30 or 40% on the ecosystems and the receiving waters. So I think it's a balanced plan in that regard.
All right, Damien, see your hand up. You're on mute.
Too many buttons. Where was it? I in my process where I was more concern about effect on the industry down the road, and protecting our shellfish industry from, you know, public perception, from different things that could inevitably, or not inevitably, but could come from being involved in wastewater.
Yeah, we'd rather our shellfish not be wastewater management. We'd rather it be a cultural food.
Can I just jump in and say we shouldn't call it wastewater management?
The specific question.
Okay.
Can the plan move forward using the shellfish department's numbers as we, as a department, as a community, expand what we view as holistic methods to harvest shellfish and to grow, you know, a whole ecology? Can they use that philosophy and numbers, or are you reliant on coming back again to commitments?
Yeah, I just missed the last part. Or are we reliant on, and I missed it.
On planned commitments. So will the plan then, will we be beholden to, in some form or another, either regulation that comes from further regulation from 208 plans, quote unquote, to kind of paraphrase, a bigger direction of wastewater mitigation, you know?
Well, if I understand the question correctly, the town is beholden to fix the problem under the Clean Water Act. There are known ways to do that. The most common way is to build a townwide collection and wastewater treatment system. The town can always do that. The town can decide to do that now, although everything I've heard is that may not be the best solution for the town. But that certainly is a backup plan that will work and the state will accept. Again, there's no commitment here for the town to do any and all of the things on the list. The commitment is to solve the problem. And the plan is designed to be adaptive. And that's really the title of part of the title of it, so that we can do more of one thing and less of another. But the plan includes, the way we've designed it now, instead of being a one technology collection system treatment, which is certainly an option, what we've opted for at this point, for all the reasons I listed in those bullets, is maybe an integrated plan with 6 or 8 technologies, some in water, some at source, might meet those objectives that I tried to bullet better. And the commitment there is, again, not the exact numbers of each technology, but rather the overall success of the plan.
And the management jurisdiction lies within the town. If we grow a 3.5 or 4 inch oyster for commercial harvest and the county says, you know, you guys committed 5% of your nitrogen mitigation to come from oyster harvest, and it's not working, and underneath your plan, you're only achieving 2%, you need to grow a 6-inch oyster, which isn't commercially viable in this, you know.
Right, no.
What would happen? So sorry about your epic wipeout, and nobody has oysters, and now you're out, you're 5%.
Bad winter.
Yeah.
Right. What would happen in that case is, again, town would meet with DEP. You're not meeting your target for this period. So what else can the town do? More innovative and alternative septics, more stormwater projects, another 95 Lawrence project. They'd look at the list of what else is there to compensate. And then, you know, we have backup plans for sewering parts of the town, like downtown areas. You saw that on the plan. So at some point it may become necessary, or the town might decide they want to build a sewer in the downtown area. That would be another option as a backup plan. So the way we've designed it is that we keep all these things on the table, and we try technologies which, again, look like they're less expensive, locally driven with jobs. And by the way, I do want to go back, and I don't know how we do this quickly, but we really need to stop saying treating wastewater with shellfish, because we're not trying to do that. Never were. What we're trying to do is feed them with the nutrients that they love, give them food, because the food, the nitrogen, is exactly the thing that causes, as you all know very well, other issues in the water column. So it's really trying to get rid of the nitrogen. And as we all know, nitrogen is a good thing. Without nitrogen, we'd have no food anywhere. So food's a good thing in agriculture.
So is biodiversity, and too many oysters can also be a bad thing.
Which is why we didn't want to, we wanted to scale the plan down to something that was much more sustainable, and within the embayment's capacity and maybe historical context. And hopefully that 4 or 5% growth per year is in that. Nancy.
Yeah, Nancy.
So, we fought, if you will, sorry, Scott, but the department pushed back hard on what we were perceiving and seeing around us. We didn't want to have what we saw happening in other towns happen here. So the way that we looked at it is, God, if we could do anything we wanted and we had the budget to do anything we wanted, what would we do? And this is kind of like a best case scenario for targeting propagation dollars into specific just 3-year rotational closures, which is something that people have long, we hear it on the flats all the time. They've long wanted us to do that. And it just made us kind of sit down and think, how could we do this in a way which would be almost part like the way that we would do it in our normal operation, but it would allow us to do more. And certainly adding in the clams, it does create diversity. And if it's not going to work after, Mother Nature is Mother Nature, and that's who's in charge. So if we see that things aren't working, we can certainly revisit it, even as we go.
Absolutely. That's right.
And the first time, I think it's the 3rd year, after 3 years we'll open, and by then we're almost done with our 5-year project. So honestly, if we start to see market influences, we're in time to just take a step back from it.
Right.
If we start to see that there's problems on that level as well.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. I think this first 5-year segment of the plan is really what I've been hearing the town wants to give a try. They've got a bunch of stuff they want to try, these innovative alternative septics. They want to fix some stormwater issues. They want to, try this permeable reactive barrier, which sounds promising. It'll give the town 5 years to try a number of things that look like they might have some promise and see where we're at. And that's the idea. Again, there's another route here, which, we don't have to do any of this stuff. There's a very clear engineering solution to this problem. But my read from, I don't know how many meetings I've been through in Wellfleet now over the past 5 or 6 years, is that maybe there's a better approach for this town. So that's what this plan says. Unfortunately, I need to jump. I have a class that I'm 15 minutes late for, but I wanted to spend some time here, and I really appreciate it. And I would love to come back if there's another chance to do that and spend more time. Nancy and I have been trying to coordinate this. We've both been missing each other a little bit, but I would love to come back and spend more time with you whenever we can do that, if you'd like to do that.
Yes, thank you so much for spending your time here today.
Absolutely.
We appreciate it.
Great questions. Thank you,
Are we losing
everybody.
Madison also, or is she
Yeah.
available for questions? Okay.
Well,
Thank you
Madison,
for coming.
Madison, why don't you, if you'd like Madison to stay for a few minutes, I'll excuse her from class for another 10 minutes, if you'd like. Would you like
Sure,
that?
we'll keep her for a couple of minutes then.
Yeah, why don't you stay,
Thank you,
Madison?
Madison.
We'll catch up.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Hey there. I'm not
Hi.
going to have as many answers as Scott. I've been on the project for 2 months. He's been on it for multiple years. So just preface that, but I can certainly take your questions here and make sure that they are addressed. Like maybe he could send out an email, but I can also do the best that I can. for you.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
So do we have other questions about this?
I kind of have a statement more to Nancy. I was a little confused at the process of which this ended up before the select board and was broken down and then came back to SAB. I think this should have come through SAB. I think that is the whole purpose of us being here. I thought that I didn't realize that the department was working on this, which is really
Yeah, I
unfortunate.
just
I think.
didn't, we did not, it was always our intention to bring it to Shellfish Advisory, and I did not realize either that it was getting broken down like this. And also it just, I didn't realize it,
But
but
you
you're
must-
always my first
Must have
stop.
realized that it was that you have $200,000 in budgetary movement being presented to the select board through another committee. I do not believe that you weren't aware of that.
I was aware of it. I didn't realize, I didn't have my timing right. I was not trying to keep anything from you guys at all. I'm totally struggling to keep up right now. And I didn't, when it got broken down like that by Ryan, which is great because I think it's important that people look at the different pieces, then I was like, perfect, let me bring it to Shellfish Advisory now. But I didn't know that, and I was not very happy about it either, because it took me off guard. It was always our intention to come to you, and we will come to you each year before we do that implementation phase, just to make sure that we're on the right track.
I
Believe
feel
me,
like
it's just a function of how fast I'm moving right now. It has nothing to do with me trying to keep anything from anybody. I
feel-
try and be a really good communicator.
that the 208 plans were one of the most contentious issue coming up and through the Massachusetts Shellfish Initiative. I think that anyone that had any interest in where that was going was aware of that. And I'm just
I didn't know it
really,
was going to be on
really
the town
surprised.
meeting agenda.
that
I
this
didn't know it
is-
was going to be on this town meeting warrant. I didn't know. I'm sorry.
It is a topic
There's
we've
not good
discussed at
communication
length in the
at town
past.
hall. I
It
did
is-
not know until I saw it on the warrant that it was going to be on there. I didn't know either. So I didn't know that there was a rush to do it right now.
to
This
do it
was
this
like
year.
something that was, yeah, I just didn't even know. And then I saw it on there, and then I saw it broken down. But, it's not like I don't spend all my time just on that, but I was surprised when it was on the warrant, and I got caught off guard, and I'm sorry.
Understood.
I agree with you, and I want people to be able to weigh in on this.
Rebecca?
Yes.
I'd just like to reiterate that as chair of the select board, I did not know this was going to be on the warrant either. It was brought to our attention a week before it came up that there was a $6.5 million ask for this year's warrant that wasn't broken down in all its components. Ryan spent a lot of time breaking that down so that each individual section would be presented to the taxpayers as an individual component of the plan, so people could really see what was in it. But the timeline for us on the select board was the same as what Nancy's describing, where we didn't know that this was going to be on this town meeting warrant and that this ask was coming until literally, I would say, the week before it came on our agenda. And
I understand that, and I'm not, I don't mean to be overly critical, but I do feel like there is a plan that has been in the work. I think there's been a lot of input offered to the wastewater committee through the Shellfish department. And I'm just surprised that over the course of 2021 and 2020, to my knowledge, there hasn't been any discussion of this plan at the SAP.
Nancy?
So I just want to respond to that, and that's because we just did it this year. We have been talking about things for a long time, and things during COVID, everything fell apart. And then Madison and Andrew and Johnny and I met a month ago, something like that. I just got the plan right when I emailed, when I saw it on the select board warrant. I said, hey, can I have a copy of that plan? Because they were kind of working all the particulars. So I got it, and then I sent it to you guys as soon as I got it. I'm not going to present something. In fact, I think I might have at one meeting earlier just kind of put it out there, just so you guys know I'm working on it. You can go back and look at the videos. I believe I might have said like there's something coming up, but I'm not going to present something until I have all the details to present to you. And this is the first draft, which has been completed within the last 4 to 6 weeks. And I just got a copy of it from Madison and Andrew, who've been collaborating, doing all the heavy lifting. Johnny and I sit there and brainstorm. So this is as early as we're getting it. I don't want to present something that's just nebulous. People want to talk about something concrete so they can ask questions about it. And I just got it.
And it's certainly a topic we've had in the past and have weighed in on. So you've probably heard our opinions and have used that in your discussions. We have 3 minutes before we need to move on to the next topic. We've already lost another person, so we are down to 4 of us. So we got to keep moving here before we lose anybody else. Does anyone have anything else that Madison needs to hear about before she goes? Nope. Okay. Thank you, Madison.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for all your work.
Thanks for coming. We'll have you back in the future.
Okay.
Thanks. All right. So our next thing should be NRAB. Is that where we are on the agenda? We're looking at the right agenda. We have John Ryle for support funding for the Curley report and the dredging alternatives.
This is John. I think NRAB would ask John Dwayne to handle the first subject. And I
Okay.
will handle the second one. That's still a fact. Okay with John?
Yeah, that's fine with me. I guess, John, I saw your email going around. We did approve the language for town warrant. Are we on the warrant?
I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, I know it was submitted, but you didn't, you didn't get a reply from Helen about whether it made it into the actual warrant?
Let's assume it's there.
All right. So, well, this is actually pretty easy. The Curley report you're all familiar with. I circulated around a little document I prepared, I think, for a Harbor conference a few years ago. That was the recommendations, and then there was the summary of the report as well as the recommendations. There's a list of 20 recommendations. If I was smart, I could figure out how to share it on my screen, but it's available at the town website, and it's a pretty comprehensive review of the harbor 50 years ago. So we're, according to the Curley report, which was published in '72, we're about 40 years overdue for having a new report. And it's fairly easy for me to make the case that every single thing we've been talking about today and everything we really talk about on this board is related to a report that's a comprehensive report of the harbor. It's taking stock of where we're at, the socioeconomic impacts of aquaculture versus the wild fishery. What is the balance currently? What was it 10 years ago, 50 years ago? And what's it going to be 10 years from now? So every single thing that has to do with the harbor, we're talking about shellfishing. When you look at the list of 20 recommendations, I want to say about 7 or 8 of them had to do with shellfishing. And so it's important. I think about some of the things we've talked about over the years are, climate change, what the effects of, the calcium in the shells in oysters. Is there a way to quantify how much more brittle our shells are now than they used to be? Is it changing? New species that we're harvesting, such as blood clams, and birds was part of it. Birds that feed on shellfish, water chemistry, plant life in the water. So it's a comprehensive review of the harbor, and I think that there's, when you think about everything that we talk about on most of the boards, Natural Resources Board, which I also sit on, obviously, is to do with Wellfleet Harbor. So it seems to me that the original recommendation from the Curley report was that every 10 years that report should be redone and re-evaluated with the results of that report from 1972. and it's long overdue. So I'm perfectly open to questions about it. I think that, you know, there's the report is available online. I think that it's as I said, it's time that it was done. And you know, for a lot of the reasons that has to do with, you know, the changes 50 years ago. An obvious one is that 90% of the shellfish harvest was cohogs back in 1968 and 69, which is when the report was, you know, the study period was. And 7.5% was oysters. Now that has obviously shifted quite a bit. And I don't know currently what the balance is between cohogs and oysters, but it certainly has shifted the other way. And so these are things, you know, we want to know. I think that, you know, when it comes to everything, the marina, the use of the marina, the fact that we have over the years, we have installed, you know, bulkheads, we've installed a pier, there's a railroad bridge that's still there. So there's things that we've done to the harbor that will be certainly worth, you know, knowing what the effects have been.
Okay. So this is something that we as a board have historically supported. So I'm seeing that there's a difference in the amount of funding that's being requested. What's up with that?
Well, so here's the thing. So John, I'm going to ask you to comment on this because John met with the new assistant TA about the process for funding this. There's a dollar amount that's got to do with $50,000. If you borrow more than that, you have to put it out to bid. So John, maybe you could comment on what is the funding, the $60,000 amount that's being submitted to town warrant was basically a figure that we came up with from the Center for Coastal Studies. They prepared us a proposal, which I believe is available for everybody on this board to see. They may have done it. He may have done a proposal on Nichols for us. If he did it for the NRAB. I don't know if he did it for the Shellfish Board, but it's available. So that's where that dollar amount came from. And it seems to me what we're going to have to do is send it out for 3 competitive bids, assuming that it gets approved at town meetings. So John, do you have any comment on the funding and what the dollar amount is?
Well, it was partly my learning process about town purchasing policy. We went around with several different versions. This $60,000 looks like a reasonable number for doing shellfish and finfish surveys. We would break that up into smaller sub-projects. And I particularly wanted to emphasize that the project, the part of it which has to do with shellfishing, we had some good discussions with Nancy Civetta at our NRAB meeting last week. We would do that with the support of the Shellfish Constable and the Shellfish Advisory Board. So it's not just going to be one big contract covers all. It'll be a number of specific contracts, each designed to address or answer some specific question about the state of the harbor right now.
Okay. Yes.
So Becca, we in one of our last meetings, we approved 63,000. So now it's just got reduced to 60. That's correct, right, John?
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
This is Nancy. I thought though that what I said at NRAB that I thought that it should all happen together. Like I didn't want the shellfish part to have to wait. Am I not remembering that correctly, John?
No, that's correct, Nancy. And I kind of made the point too that I don't want to think about this as piecemeal. This is a comprehensive review of the harbor. Everything that has to do with the harbor. That's going to involve the marina. It's going to involve commercial fishermen, draggers. It's going to involve charter boats. Anybody that has any use of the harbor you know, when you look at the Curley report, it's very comprehensive. It's a lot of work. And you know, when I look at this dollar amount, it seems to me that that figure is very low for what we're getting out of it. And we need to come up with a way to quantify where we're at right now. You know, and it's got to do with economics. It's got to do with what we want the shellfish situation to look like in the harbor. You know, what is the balance? What's the correct balance? You know, there's been suggestions from those of you who remember Anna Maria Frankich, who did a report for us about shellfishing in the harbor and oysters in terms they were doing specifically to do with, you know, with helping with the water quality. Her take on it is we have the capacity for way more oysters than we have right now. And I don't want to throw numbers out there, but it was substantially more than are in the harbor right now. So again, this is something that it needs to be budgeted in. And I'm encouraged about when I was listening to the plans for dealing with, you know, water remediation, talking about 100 million, 150 million over the course of, you know, the years, that this is a very small amount of money. And if we're going to be sending it out to bid, which sounds like what the process is going to be, maybe it'll end up being less. But you know, when it comes to doing it piecemeal, the survey took 12 months. So it's going to be the original Curley report. If you look at it, started in September 1st of 1968, and it ended August 31st in 69. So it was a year. It was a whole year's survey, and you know, this can change based on whether we have a lot of ice, for instance. But it's a study that's overdue, and I don't think that there's anybody that, you know, when it comes to all the different little fingers of harbor life, it's worth taking a look at and figuring out what questions we want answered. And that's kind of where we're at, you know, with the Shellfish Advisory Board is what do you want to see taken out of it? If you look at the recommendations that are there at the end of the original Curley report, the 20 recommendations, take a look at the ones that relate to shellfish and see what we accomplished and what we need to think about looking at again. So I don't know if anybody has any specific questions about the report. And I mean, I think that this board ought to be thinking about what questions you want answered. And I'm happy to field questions if you have any.
Tom, have you got something?
No, I'm good. I think this is a well worth $60,000. I think it's well overdue, and I think it only benefit a lot of departments here in Wellfleet. So my thumbs up on this one.
This is something we've been over a couple of times and we've all agreed is pretty important to be done.
So how about this? How about somebody make a motion to approve the study of the study of Wellfleet Harbor as proposed in the town warrant article?
Well, there we go. I'll make a motion to approve.
To vote. Okay.
I'll second it.
Sorry, a vote, yes, all right, to support the funding for the Curley report, unless Damien has a question first. Nope, okay. All right, your picture just came up, so I wasn't sure if that was you asking a question, sorry.
I was hearing a vote part. And
okay,
support it.
All right, so it's been proposed, it's been seconded, so all in favor of supporting it?
How about this? Is there any opposition?
4-0, right?
Yep, 4-0. Okay.
Great. Thanks, John.
Thank you for bringing that. All right, so then we're on to the dredging alternatives. And I am trying to keep us on task here with like 10-minute kind of intervals here, so.
I will handle this one as
Okay.
expeditiously as possible. Just to follow up on the vote you just had, thank you. First of all, thank you very much. And second, in developing plans for how we move forward, I think we will want to meet with this board on some of the planning details. So we will be back to you.
Okay.
You put your foot into it and now you're stuck.
Yes, we would definitely like to be kept up to speed on what's happening.
Dredging.
Mhm.
This is really about alternatives to dredging. We're all aware that the dredging program, which is ongoing now,
Mhm.
is expensive. Whether the money comes federal, state, or local, it's expensive. And it's time consuming. And one of the consequences of it being time consuming, that the dredging period got delayed. So use of the marina, the number of people using the marina decreased, so that there's a loss of revenue. So we have been thinking about and looking for ways to carry out the dredging in a way that is inexpensive and that is under local control. It doesn't require lots of big barges coming in from someplace else. And if you're thinking now specifically about the north channel of the marina, that is the bit of the marina that leads up to Mayo Creek, we had the idea that if you could take the dredging spoils and reintroduce them into the tidal currents, that they would be carried up onto the Duck Creek marshes, which is where tidal material should go. And it would both be a relatively low cost dredging, but also would benefit the marshes. In order to, as background to this, is a first step in seeing if this was feasible, we had some work done at the Center for Coastal Studies under the direction of Dr. Agnes Mittermeier to actually evaluate what the so-called black mayonnaise is.
Mhm.
And she had two recommendations out of that. One is that black mayonnaise is perfectly innocuous stuff environmentally. It's not harmful. It has no dangerous microbes in it or septic materials in it. And the second is she asked that we start calling it black custard rather than black mayonnaise, because elsewhere in the world, black mayonnaise is a pejorative term. It refers to something which is noxious, and this is not noxious. So our next step now is to ask town meeting for $25,000 to begin to take this concept and see if we can make it into a practical engineering project. And to me, having been a scientist that has worked in this area in the past, the critical thing is to see if the black custard can be redispersed into the water. And that requires some laboratory experiments, not terribly difficult. If we can overcome that barrier, then the next question is to outline an engineering procedure so that it can be carried out in a practical way, either yearly or every 2 years, every 3 years, something fairly frequently, for two reasons. One is you don't want the buildup to interfere with the harbor activity. And second, the less buildup, the easier it's going to be to do the dispersion because the material won't be compacted. So that's the $25,000 we're asking the town. It doesn't directly affect shellfishing or the Shellfish Advisory Board, but I think it's a useful project for the harbor as whole. I hope it works out, and would appreciate any comments or support.
I guess I'm the one who thought that Shellfish Advisory should look at it because that is a primary winter wild fishing area. And so just, I think the study of it is something that they will want to pay attention to, just to see where things are proposed. And that's why I thought they should look at it.
thank you for bringing it to us. I have a lot of questions about how this would work out practically, which is probably what the money is going to be used for in figuring that out. So
I just comment back to Nancy, if I may. Part of what we may be able to do on this is to hire someone like Kirk Bosma to do some modeling work, so that when we put the dispersed black custard into the water, we can be sure it goes where it should go.
right.
And that that he is already doing for the Herring River project, and this is in some respects even simpler.
Okay.
But yes, basically your observation is correct. This money is designed to raise and answer, start raising and answering the questions which you may have. And if you have a list of them, I'd love to have it so we can build it into the
Okay.
request for proposals.
Okay. Anybody else have some thoughts on this?
I just have, some observations that, the oysters aren't really pumping in the winter, which is probably when you'd want to do it to not risk, sedimenting in the oysters and starving them basically. But at the same time, that's the time when that area is open for commercial fishing, so that those two reasonings don't overlap well,
Yeah, I'm wondering about if there are terrapins that are hibernating up in the marsh that we affected.
You have many of the same permitting issues you get with any kind of dredging. It would certainly be done over winter because you don't want to interfere with the actual operation of the marina.
It might be interesting if it coincided with one of the openings of one of the rotational areas that we were talking about earlier. And then people could be sent somewhere else to harvest while this area was closed. Just a thought. It seems like it might be something that we would want to weigh in on, whether we support it being discussed, looked into. Does the Shellfish Board want to make a recommendation that it should be looked into or not?
I would say it's a feasibility study, so all we're doing is voting on the money to fund a feasibility study to see if it's going to be something that we could support. So it's a good idea, I think, to study it and come up with we should certainly have some questions and we want to weigh in. And, let's see what happens. The spoils have to go somewhere. If we can make them go locally at no harm to the shellfishing community, then it's probably worth checking out.
I think looking into alternatives to having it done every 50 years is a great idea.
Yeah.
I can see what alternatives we have. So
John, is that a motion?
Make a motion to support the $25,000 to study the feasibility of dispersing dredge spoils in Duck Creek.
I could second that.
Any opposition?
All in favor, 4-0, right?
Sounds right.
Sounds right.
Super.
Thank you for support, and as you have questions or concerns, please let us know because we need to address them.
Please let us know if there are any updates. We would very much like to stay current with this one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Two-way street. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
All right. So are we up to Blackfish Creek and Springbrook Marsh properties? Bruce is here to speak to us.
I'm Bruce Herter, Chair of the Open Space Committee.
Thank you.
And just as the last time I talked to the committee, we had also proposed some Indian Neck properties, and we proposed parcel 188 and map 30. The select board voted 3-2 against moving the Indian Neck properties to town meeting, so that's off the table. Ryan had some concerns about 188 being a town landing, specifically the Cannon Hill Beach landing. And we agreed that that's at least very likely. It's hard with some of these old landings to get exactly. So we pulled that one as well. So I'm only here to, the select board did agree to allow this to move forward. My understanding is has voted to support it. The article now reads, to see if the town will vote to transfer care, custody, management, and control of 2 lots of town-owned land indicated below from the select board to the Conservation Commission for purposes of open space conservation or to do or act anything thereon. So map 30 parcel 86 is a 2.06 acre wetlands marsh property in Blackfish Creek, abutting conservation lands owned by the Wellfleet Conservation Trust and Mass Audubon. And I don't know how to hit the map on that, but basically this is a piece that's up closer to Route 6. There's no access issues with it at all. It is strictly a marsh piece of property. The other one is map 42, parcel 137, and that's 3.26 acres of wetlands marsh that abuts the town-owned Bayberry Hill Conservation Land and trail property off Lieutenant Island Road. And for those who know the Bayberry Hill Trail, it's basically as you're going down the trail and you hit the bottom, it's the marsh that's out in front of that trail. And again, there's no access issues that we can see. There aren't any. So what we're doing now is proposing only those 2 be transferred from the select board to Conservation Commission.
Unmute. Can you
Go ahead.
refresh my memory as to what changes when it becomes part of the Conservation Commission?
Well, the couple of reasons we do this. One is it's an extra layer of protection because once these things are in conservation care, you have to go through, once they have to go through the state legislature to take them out. So if somebody wanted to do something with that property, basically they wouldn't be able to move forward without that extra check. The other thing is that all of the properties get inspected once a year. And if there are any issues, if they're dumping, which is not likely on these, but not impossible given the map 42 parcel 137, that's something that would be picked up within a fairly short time. Particularly some of the properties don't get a lot of a look. So what it does is allow for the inspection and it gives some extra protection for the properties. And the marsh properties, as we've been hearing, a number of the articles being presented today are, I think, critical to the harbor, critical to the oyster industry. And
having looked at the maps for both of these places, they're pretty darn inaccessible. And it doesn't look like there's any shellfishing involved in any of them. So anybody have any questions about them?
I don't see, maybe I'm missing something, but I don't, what's the 3 parcels, Bruce? I see map 30, map 42. There's only, oh, no, that's an error and it has been corrected. When I took 188 out, I forgot to take the 3 lots of town, that is now, okay. That now says 2 lots. And that has been sent in, so that's just a typo.
All right, thank you.
There are only the 2 lots.
So one of them was 3186, is that correct?
That is correct.
And this is all the way up by Route 6 in Blackfish Creek, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, I'm looking right now at it.
And 158 is already conservation land of some kind?
all around that is conservation land either owned by the Conservation Trust or Audubon. So this is contiguous with all those other conservation lands up there.
Okay.
So the one on 186, that does cover Prospect Hill over there, doesn't it?
It's a ways out from, the 188 is really, if you look at that, it's all marsh, but it really is contiguous with what I think is a town landing there. There are concerns about access, and so we pulled that. 186, you have to look out on the marsh. Again, it's surrounded by protected areas, and it's simply an area that is part of the marsh system out there.
Okay, and that's, okay, so I think of, I used to live over that way, and there's on Prospect Hill, there's a little subdivision over there, and it's got a landing where there's always couple of boats parked there. And it's technically, it's a way to the water. And I just want to make sure that any use that's there now is going to continue for the folks that live in that little subdivision over there. And I believe you, I'm having a hard time zooming up on the map. I should know how to do this. However, as long as it's not going to interfere with the use of any landing over there, and it's very, very marshy, it's all low, it's all underwater, is that right?
It is, and if you look at the map, the area between the subdivision that you're talking about and this land is already in Conservation Trust care.
Yeah.
So there's a number of acres before you get to this piece. It's not contiguous with those properties. 188 is, and we've removed that. But 186 is out on its own in the middle of the creek. And we just, again, given whole bunches of discussion here today around, the environment and doing the right things by the marshes. We just think this helps present a marsh where there aren't any issues around access.
On the other map.
It helps if I lift the map up. I don't know if you can see it on this. Okay.
Yeah, it seems to be way out in the middle of the marsh.
It is.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, from personal experience, it's not a very shellfishy area. It's, if anything, you got those ribbed mussels over there, and that's about it. There's no oysters.
Right, is there anything we should know on the other map, 42-137?
Okay. So that one, I think I'll try to put that, again, if you're walking down, it's at the bottom of the Baber Hill Trail. So you're walking, for those who know that trail, you pick it up
off of Lieutenant's Island.
Exactly, the one that's right on Lieutenant Island Road. And you walk down, and at the end of the trail, there's a little bench, there's some areas there. And this is the marsh that you look out onto from the end of that, from the bottom of that trail. It actually goes up to the right and around. Again, this is an area that there are a couple of private houses that are contiguous. The rest of it is all conservation land. And it's all mostly town owned, but also Conservation Trust land over there off Lieutenant Island Road. And I apologize for not having that, but I don't have the technology or the, so this is that part that's outlined there. It's at the bottom of the trail.
It's just marsh. All right, we are closing in on the 10 minutes here. There we go. So we do need to keep moving. It is already 1 o'clock in 3 minutes and we still have more to go. So are there any specific questions to either of these two parcels that we haven't already covered? Okay, would anyone like to make a motion to support having these parcels moved to the Conservation Trust? Is that the
Commission.
word? What is it?
Conservation Commission.
Conservation Commission, sorry, I'm trying to skim my notes here. All right, Conservation Commission. Anybody want to second that?
Did you make the motion?
Yes, kind of.
All right, you made, I'll second it.
Any opposition?
All in favor, 4?
4-0.
4-0.
4-0.
Okay,
Great.
all right,
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bruce.
thank you. And
Where the hell are we now?
additional part-time personnel. Are we
So
up
it's,
to-
oh, hi,
Shellfish
it's my
Department.
budget. It's my
Hi.
budget. And I have literally like, I'm supposed to leave now, but I'll push it.
Okay,
So I am not sure, because there's been a lot of movement going on with the town warrant and there's been a lot of changes in budgets. The last I knew, which was on Thursday or Friday last week, both the truck, which you've already voted on anyway, so thank you, and the part-time seasonal personnel is supposed to now be covered by a transfer from the Shellfish fund and would not go up as an individual warrant article.
Okay.
However, things are so messed up. I think I would just appreciate it if I could talk to you a little bit about the
okay,
additional part-time personnel. You know, the first thing I have to say is that we're losing Drew after 3 years of service with us.
oh,
So it's a huge disappointment and loss after all that training, but I
Yeah.
can't blame him. He needs a year-round job and, you know, he can't
We're not there
make
yet.
it, just,
Mhm.
just doing it summers. So what I did do is I kind of documented from the figures from Sticker Tracker, which is where we look at permit sales. So in the time period between December 1st, and I think I did it through March 31st, last year we had sold 323 rec permits, and this year we've sold 510. So already we're dealing with a 60% increase in people that we know are going to be out there this year. We've also thankfully increased our revenue by 9%. So it must be, I think what I noticed is that there's a ton more senior resident permits. So maybe a lot of people just turned 65. But so I hope you saw my narrative that I presented to the finance committee, which recommended this. And I believe the select board also already voted to recommend this. But I really want you guys to weigh in as well. We need that fourth body from May to September when the rec area is only open on Sundays and Wednesdays. So everybody congregates. And, you know, last year Drew was very taxed, you know, doing our best. But I think when we look at the big picture, when it comes to even like, you know, recreational data is not required. And so if we're able to capture some of that data and then feed that into wastewater, for example, it might not be a huge difference, but wouldn't it be great to get credit for what we're already doing?
Right.
So we need to be able to keep records of this, and it's hard when it's one person over there. So we would try and get 2 people over there,
We
although
just
without Drew, I'm
lost
not sure.
Damien.
Oh, we did? Okay.
We did, which,
Oh, wait, Zach's back. Hold on.
oh, all right.
Nancy, what's those numbers again? 323 to 560?
So 510, 510.
323 to 510?
Yeah. Zach, are you with us?
Hello, I'm
Yes.
back.
Hi, hope LMA's okay.
Everything's fine. Just needed a little help if she, someone ran into her.
Oh,
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 no.
no.
Yeah.
I'm glad she's okay.
Don't go to Orleans.
No.
Oh, I have to go right now to Harwich.
Me too, actually.
All right, well, I'm trying to be quick, but so one of the things, so my overall budget, I think I was asking you to vote on the overall budget and on the addition of the part-time seasonal shellfish deputy. So it would allow us to put 2 people on Indian Neck. You know, I don't even know because now we don't have Drew, but that was the goal. We've got, you know, Vibrio that we're on top of. We've got, you know, grant inspections. So the summer is our busiest time, and having a 4th person to help us out of the rec area, I think will do wonders for us just in terms of capturing what's really going on out there and then turning that into data that the select board can use in terms of, you know, either wastewater or just the amount of benefit that they are giving by selling these permits to the public by allowing them to come and shellfish and just seeing the return on that investment.
So this is Drew, who was the seasonal part-time, and this would be an
He was
additional
seasonal full-time.
He was seasonal
He was
full-time.
seasonal full-time.
Okay.
He was mid-May to the end of October.
Okay. So that would leave his position open, and this would create a new position also. So we would have 2 seasonal. Okay.
Yeah.
Just clarifying that. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, did you have a question?
Yeah, no, I was gonna make a motion since I'm out there maybe once a week. I mean, it is the wild, wild west. There's a lot of people, as Nancy said, it needs to be controlled and it needs to be monitored. And I think getting information and data that Drew got before, I think it's beneficial for all of us.
Okay.
So
It's
I
about
make a motion.
8,000, I'm forgetting.
8,256.
Yeah.
There we go.
So I make a motion to approve the 8,256 part-time for recreational area.
Is this just specifically recreational area?
Yes.
Well, that's their first priority, but of course, you know, if it's part-time, then they're gonna be helping Johnny on the grant. They're gonna be filling in wherever we need help.
Okay.
We got a lot going on.
Mhm.
But Sundays and Wednesdays, they will be there.
Okay. All right.
Ja-
So that was a first and a second. So we want to, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Poro.
All right.
Aye, Nance.
Okay, thank you. And then my overall budget, oops, Damien's back. My overall budget, I believe, so what I did with my budget 179, which is the administrative, there's all of the salary stuff, which is going to increase due to contracts. And the other increase is that part-time person. Then when you get down to kind of my administrative expenses, I think I kept that exactly the same because I had increased it to do signage, which I'm going to try and do this year and get a year-end transfer, which was what was instructed to me to do. We need official signage because right now everything's breaking down, all that plastic. I just can't stand it. And then the other thing was credit card fees, which had bumped my budget up, but now the credit card fees are getting taken out and done by the town in general. So
Okay.
my 179 budget is basically flat. My 180 budget, which is propagation, you already approved the revolving fund. So that is flat at $6,000. And then I will take $40,000 from the revolving fund to fund that line item. And we actually approved it up to 50 just in case something else comes along, especially the county has said we're likely to get another COVID grant in the fall to buy oysters from farmers. So I got another 10 grand to do that or whatever else.
All right.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Sounds like you covered pretty much of it. And it's stuff we have kind of looked at before. So shall we vote to approve the budget? Anybody have any questions before we make a motion? Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve budgets as stated.
Okay. I'll second it.
Any opposition?
I'm
All
not
in
hearing
favor,
any
4-0?
in
5-0?
favor.
5-0, right, Damon's back? Okay.
Okay. So now I have to, you guys have 2 more things on the agenda, the preschool voucher program and then the animal control, which I sent you the
Oh, Lord. Okay. The dog
And
bylaw.
yeah, the dog bylaw. So thank you, Becca. So can I make Tom the host of this?
Yeah, what am I?
Tom? And then I'll just watch the end, or somebody can tell me.
Okay.
I'm just curious. And
Okay.
thank you very much. I'm sorry that I have to run. And let me see, how can I,
Okay.
tell
So
me if this works, Tom.
Yep, you are the host now. Wow. Good
Okay.
show.
Thank you, everybody.
thank
See
you.
you later.
See you, Nancy.
So the preschool voucher program is not on the town warrant yet because I had just spoken to, oh, her name has evaporated. It's been a long day. Over at the COA, who administers the money that goes to the 3 and 4-year-olds in Wellfleet so that they can attend preschool. And what she had suggested was that we might want to vote in favor of the funding, of having that fully funded, because so many of the fishing families in town rely on that for their preschool kids. And that, so that's why I brought it to us. So are we all familiar with what that is, or do I need to find some clarification?
Are there details of that program somewhere?
That is a really good question. I didn't actually realize we had gotten it on our agenda today, so I kind of forgot about that. I don't know where my notes are. I'm unprepared for that. It was enough. It averages about $7,000 per kid for 3 to 4-year-olds for preschool. Because there's a fluctuation between 11 and 17 kids per year, more or less. So I think we were looking at 30,000. I would have to double check on that. I'm sorry.
Are you talking about the vouchers?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
So they were already funded by town meeting last year.
Okay.
They should be, I don't know, the administration took them off the budget for 3-year-olds, but it's not really allowable to do that.
Okay.
So it really should be on the budget. I don't know. So that's the story there. It's $100,000 for 3-year-olds.
Thank you. That's what it was.
For 4-year-olds. The 4-year-olds budget, I think, was still there, but for whatever reason, administration took off the vouchers for the 3-year-olds. Suzanne Thomas is the one that oversees that program.
Thank you so much for saving my backside on this one.
Yeah, she had issues with that as well. Basically, that they shouldn't have been defunded.
Right.
So Ryan, do you think this will make the warrant?
It shouldn't make the warrant. It should just be budgeted.
Okay.
I don't think there's any question on the select board about that.
Okay.
But I mean, we haven't voted on it, but there shouldn't be any issue.
Okay.
And it had already been approved by town meeting voters.
Great.
So, it's already funded.
Okay.
So.
All right. Good. Just thinking of all of the
good.
fishing families that rely on this for our 3 and 4-year-olds. So, okay, then I guess we can move right on to the dog. The animal control, just number H on our thing here. The general dog bylaw that Helen sent us, and if I can get to it in my, here it is. Or not. Did you all get a chance to look at it? Everything had been written in red, I believe, where it had been changed.
Yes, I
The
read it.
newest edition. Okay. Make it big enough so I can see it on my screen. It looks like there was a lot of updating of language. Does everybody have a copy of it? Should have been in our emails.
Yeah, I reviewed it and I didn't have a problem with any of the changes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything. Like section 15.5 dog waste removal looks like it's all been updated, that dog owners, keepers, and persons having control of dogs are responsible for immediately removing and disposing of solid waste. Don't let your dog annoy anybody. Dogs may not be left unattended in parked vehicles at any time of year. That was an update.
Oh, did they change it to any time of year?
That's what it says in red. It says 15.7.
Okay.
No dog may be left unattended in a parked vehicle at any time of year.
And what does this have to do with us anyway?
I think that it had to do with us because it had, if I can find it, there was beach. We usually request dogs not be on the beach.
The waste, collecting the waste.
Collecting the waste.
Yeah, but they're not allowed. Oh no, are they not allowed on Mayo Beach?
They were not. Owners and keepers of dogs, relation.
I have a question about leaving your dog unattended at any time of year. What does that, I mean, if you go shopping and you leave your car out on Main Street, your dog in the car, and you go and buy a few things in the grocery store, that's unattended. I mean, I know that people do that, and in the summertime, it's probably a bad idea, but in the wintertime, I have a problem with that.
Yeah, me too, John. I didn't realize they had changed that part. I missed that.
Yeah.
Or leave them
I
in the
mean, the
back.
way I understood this was rules all coming down from the state, right? The state changed all their policies.
That was my understanding, was that this was being updated to match that more.
Yeah, that's my understanding, Becca.
Okay.
I mean, this should probably get a lot of discussion at the town meeting.
Yes, it should. Maybe it's something that we don't want to weigh in on today.
We could reserve our comment till town meeting.
Okay,
How about that?
that sounds good.
Say that again, John? What'd you say?
Comment till town meeting.
Reserve comment.
Oh, reserve comment to town meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's safe. The interesting thing is that we're going to have an animal control officer, which will be an interesting position.
I mean, nobody likes to see a dog left in a car in the summertime at all, but in the wintertime, now people do it all the time, and I'm just not, you leave the window open a little bit, and anyways, it seems to me it could be if somebody could get a ticket for it, and it becomes problematic.
All right, so we'll reserve
I think we
comment
should, reserve comment on this one for
for
now.
town meeting. Okay.
We've seen it, we've looked at it. We've been made aware.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so then,
I think that's it, isn't it?
I think it is. Okay, so we need to schedule our next meeting. That
Now,
would
hey,
be-
Becca, before we do that, while you're
Yes.
doing that, am
Mhm.
I supposed to send a note to Rebecca just saying what we supported? So we did not vote in the Agricultural Commission. We didn't really vote on the wastewater. We said yes on the NRAB, supporting the Curly. We said yes on the dredging. I think we said yes on the Blackfish Creek.
Yes, I think that we do need to send
should-
her a message about that.
We said yes on Nancy's part-time and Nancy's full budget preschool. That was already approved per
It was
Ryan.
already approved.
And then
something
the animal control will
changed in the
reserve,
2 weeks.
comments till town
Okay.
meeting. I'll send her something, I'll copy you, okay?
Okay,
So you know. All right. I just want to make sure my role.
okay. So
Thanks, Tom.
sometime in June, we need to have a meeting. No, wait, it's May. We have May still, don't we? So do we want to try to set a date now, or do we want to try to get the rest of our members' input on a date?
Let's set the date now.
Okay, who's got the tide chart?
I can pull that up.
See what weeks we got going on here. We are setting the dates and then we are done. And I'm taking this off.
May 21st. Wait, hold on.
The 20th look.
Thursday, May 20th?
Yeah, it's not good tides.
Nope, Thursday, May 20th.
What time?
6:30?
6:30.
I'm good.
All right,
Thanks, everyone.
thank you.
Meeting adjourned at 1:19.
Perfect.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, everyone, for
Thanks,
Yeah.
coming today.
everybody.
Oh, all right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you.